Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Soul Academy. Today we are looking at the major fears, 7 major fears. Up until this point, everything's been quite positive and educational. This episode is going to be mostly negative, but don't worry, there will be a very positive spin at the end of all of this. So we're going to be revisiting this construction here, the 7 planets, the 7 days of the week. If you're not familiar with this, there are previous episodes that explain all of this. So here they are, 7 base fears. And I'm going to go through them one by one in order. They relate to the planets and the days of the week like so. And without any further ado, actually, there is one thing ado before I begin. Pardon me. I first caught onto this idea when I read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, where he outlines 6 basic fears that basically prevent people from becoming prosperous. And it made me suspect that perhaps Napoleon Hill was something of an alchemist when I read this. And also straight away I was kind of mapping these fears onto the planetary diagram like this as they came along. I was left with a planet and a gap, and I filled it in with another one of, well, basically with the logical I don't know how to put it, through a process of elimination. I was able to insert another basic fear, or add one onto the end of this list. Okay, so now let us begin. So I'm not going to talk about how to deal with these fears as I go through them. I'm just going to explain what they are. And we're going to go around the planetary construction, this thing, and we're going to look at each of these fears one by one in order. Okay, so let us begin. So the fear of inability. This fear is located at Mars. Mars being a realm of manifestation. Mars, the element there is iron. Mars is about doing stuff and getting stuff done. And so the fear associated with this is the opposite of this, which is the fear that you might be useless, that you might become a burden to others, and that you might not be able to gain independence or basically make money. Napoleon Hill talks about the fear of poverty, but I believe the fear of poverty is a sort of a secondary fear. And it's a secondary fear of Mars, but also one of the other planets that we'll come to later. Next up, we've got Venus. Venus being a realm of emotion and attraction. And so the negative side of this realm is the fear of loneliness. So this includes things like fear of rejection, or a fear of loss of love of someone, the fear that someone might fall out of love with you, or just basically the fear of missing out, which I think most people have experienced at some point or another. This all dwells within the realm of Venus. Then moving round to Mercury, we've got the fear of ridicule. So Mercury is the cerebral, the intellectual realm. And so the negative aspects of that is that the possibility that people might use their intellect against you So this is the fear that people will defame or humiliate you. It's the fear of the power of satire and how powerful satire is. Fear of reputation destruction. Okay, people talk about cancel culture now, and I think this fear is definitely holding a lot of people back, or has been, for the past maybe decade or so on the internet, ever since the culture wars began and cancel culture started. People have been afraid to speak their mind out of fear of ridicule. So next, at Jupiter, we simply have the fear of death. Jupiter is the creative realm, and so the opposite of creation is destruction. So yeah, the fear of death, when you don't want to die. I think everybody has experienced this fear at some point or other. It seems that everyone is born with this. I mean, I talk about fears being negative, but negativity is not something always to be avoided, right? Fear has its purpose. If we weren't afraid of death, then we might not be around today. Fear can be our friend as well as an obstruction. So the fear of death can often result in obsessions, obsessions with productivity, for example, the obsession with dieting, and the obsession with health, and the anti-aging obsession. Often these are rooted in a fundamental fear of death. So that the fear of death can not only be something that holds you back, but it could be something that distracts you into being somebody who maybe you weren't supposed to be. Maybe you had another destiny, another calling, another charism, but the fear of death took you into this whole productivity, health, dieting thing. And maybe you became quite popular because other people who were afraid of death bought into your obsession with productivity and health and anti-aging, etc. Okay, moving on. We have the lunar fear. So Luna is the realm of spirit and of instinct. And so the negative side of that is when instincts go awry, they go astray, and this then becomes insanity. And the fear of insanity is not only the fear that you yourself might go insane or might be insane, it is also the fear that you might fall prey to an insane mob, for example, or that an insane person might become obsessed with you. So yeah, there's something very irrational and unreasonable about insanity, which if somebody relies on their powers of reason and rationality to navigate through life, they might find themselves afraid of this because their primary tool for navigating through life is rendered useless at the mind of insanity. Moving on to Saturn, we have the fear of ill health. So Saturn represents the reality that exists whether we like it or not, and so this may manifest itself as a fear of a terminal illness, that you might have one or that you might acquire one. And this can also manifest in the fear of germs and the fear of illness, the fear of disease and things like that. I think we saw a lot of that over the start of the 20s. Need I say more? And finally, we have Sun. And the Sun is the element is gold, and it represents wealth and success. And so the negative side of this is the fear of failure, which is also the fear of poverty. So, yeah, it's the fear that what you're trying to do will fail. and that you won't have anything. I've also put here that this could be a fear that you're wasting your life, which could be a positive motivation to make some change. Although I wouldn't rely entirely on that. You do want things to strive for, as well as things to run away from, I would say. But it's a legitimate thing to fear that you might be wasting your life, because, frankly, you might be. You might be doing the wrong thing. You may have been put on this earth for a certain purpose to, what can I say? Use your skills, use your unique gifts. And if you're not doing that, perhaps your life could be better. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so here they are, the 7 base fears. I spoke before about how people associate these symbols with evil, and yes, people have used symbols to do evil things, but I make the case that symbols are tools, and just like a knife is a tool, it can be used to cut someone and hurt someone, but it can also be used to cook and make food, people can use an understanding of the base fears to control other people, and that is not my intention here at all. What I'm hoping that you as a viewer will get from this is the ability to identify these base fears within yourself, to identify the things that are holding you back, so that you can begin to figure out how to face those fears, how to tackle those fears, and how to overcome them, so that you can become the person that you want to be and live the life that you want to live. So that's that. Okay, so I want to move on. I want to bring up something that a guy called Jesus said about fear. You might have heard of him. This is a snippet from the King James Bible, Matthew 6:25. It's from the Sermon on the Mount, and this is where Jesus is basically standing on a hill talking to lots of people, and he's giving them pause for thought, a pause that lasted, a couple of thousand years. And there are many people that say that all moral teachings since then have basically just been footnotes on the Sermon on the Mount. And here Jesus is addressing fear, right? So he says, "Therefore I say to you," I will paraphrase it sort of while reading, because this is written in Old English. Don't worry about what you're going to eat, or what you're going to drink, or what you're going to wear. Firstly, isn't life just so much more than those things? And besides, look at the birds in the sky. They don't farm, right? They don't sow seeds. They don't harvest. They don't build barns and gather grain in silos or anything like that. And yet they get the food that they need. And are we not just so much more capable than they are, right? Then 27, he's basically saying, what, can you make yourself taller by worrying? No. And let's talk about clothing, right? So consider the lily, says Jesus. They don't toil in the fields, and they don't spin yarn, and they don't make clothing. But he says that even the Emperor Solomon, in all of his glory, was not as beautiful as a lily in full bloom. And he's saying, God clothes the grass in the field when the grass is in bloom and there are flowers. And one day it's there, and the next day people cut it down and they burn it. And what does he say? Shall he not much more clothe you? He's basically saying even the grass gets beautiful clothing, right? And are you not so much more than that? So therefore, don't worry about it, basically. Take no thought into what you're going to eat or what you're going to drink or what you're going to wear. All right. For these are things that faithless people worry about. And, Jesus is saying here that, God knows what you need and he's going to give you what you need, basically, if you have faith. And even if you're not a religious person, you can take this as you are going to get the things that you need. Like, it's really easy to just get the bare basics of what you need. And mostly what you worry about is you're not really worried about starving or freezing to death. You're more worried about being embarrassed or losing status or something like that. And, if these things are holding you back from doing the things that you really want to do, then if you really consider this stuff consciously, you realize how silly a lot of your fears can be. So, yeah, there's the easy English version for fun. Okay. So I want to draw your attention now to a gentleman by the name of Jim Rohn. If you like listening to wise men talking about life and stuff, then you might really enjoy this guy. If you like listening to Alan Watts, you might want to try Jim Rohn. He was a motivational speaker, mostly for like business. But there's more to Jim Rohn than that. He's no mere motivational speaker. His teachings are based on ancient wisdom. I suspect he was also something of an alchemist himself. So I have some recommended listening there. You can find most of his talks on YouTube. And yeah, if you like listening to podcasts and stuff, I'd recommend giving him a listen. Okay, so yeah, that's about all I have time for. Actually, that's not true. I've got loads of time, but that's basically all the things I wanted to talk about. So thank you very much for listening. I know it's been a while since I did one of these. Don't worry, I haven't gone anywhere. I intend to do more. We're basically at the end of this curriculum right now. All I've got left is mnemonics, which I'm probably going to start doing some other stuff before I get into the last one of these. I've been considering doing some like social commentary, offering some reactions and commentary to current affairs from a sort of liberal arts perspective. So I might do a bit of that in the near future. So yeah, regarding these base fears, I would implore you to do some shadow work, do some work on yourself. Consider the things that you're afraid of. Write them down and see if they're related to any of these base fears. I'm not going to tell you what to do about that. I'm just saying it's a good idea to take a good close look at yourself. And I know that will be uncomfortable, but I promise you it will be worth it. Okay, that is all. Thanks again. Hope you're all doing well. Take care and goodbye.